live. I'm going to invite Ange. Okay. This is The Secret Place, Part 3. Hi, Ange.
Hey.
Well, here we are again.
Are-
It's been quite the week since our retreat. since our retreat. I think we could write a short book. Um, but yeah, so interesting. Lots of ups and downs, and just yeah. So, where do we want to start, Ange? We are on The Secret Place, Part 3, and we're going to be covering, quite a bit tonight, but I think we'll just catch up on what our week's been like. How about you, Ange? How are you feeling?
I'm really sore.
Mhm.
For those that are just catching up, I had a really bad car accident a week ago Friday, right before our retreat, and some lady pulled out in front of me on the highway, and I hit her going 60, and there was a death in the other vehicle. But yeah, I have a lot of whiplash, and my chest all the way through to my back it's incredibly painful. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's an absolute miracle that you made it through the weekend. And then as the week progressed this week, it got worse and worse. It was like, I'm not sure how you ever made it through the weekend, other than I guess I am sure God wanted you there and He gave you that ability.
yeah,
So,
I lived this week on muscle relaxers and pain pills, and that's about all I could do. And then the lady that was in the car with me, she has hand surgery tomorrow. She broke her thumb and she broke all the bones going into here
oh
and into her
gosh.
have wires and
Oh, I didn't hear that part. Oh, the poor thing.
yes,
Um,
I'm over it. I'm ready to feel better again, but it's been a pressing week. It's so interesting that we're talking about The Secret Place. This is part 3 of The Secret Place, about pressing in. And when we press in and we're reaching for the hem of his garment, and we are wanting to spend time with him and close in and draw in on an intimacy with him. We don't think about the dry seasons or the seasons of hardship that where we press in the seasons of hardship. That's a whole different ballgame, because we have definitely experienced a lot of whiplash. Or, well, I've experienced whiplash, but you kind of have too. Hurt yourself. But we've experienced a lot of warfare this
oh,
week.
yeah, it's been crazy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I hate to say it, but I had another incident with my dogs. Crazy. My knee was hurting so bad. And then it kind of let up one day. So I thought I'd take him around the block again. And one of the dogs got really scared and ran underneath me. And I couldn't catch myself. And I stuck my leg out and it jammed my hip to the point where yesterday I could barely move. I couldn't, it was the same knee and the same side as my knee and my hip. And I really thought I fractured my hip. Um, Lots of prayer and some frankincense oil and all that stuff. I'm feeling better today, but I'm like, this is insane. Ange and I have both been like, honestly, feel physically attacked. But it's so weird though, is I never, during this whole time, I just know that I'm safe. I don't have fear necessarily of the enemy. It's just made me realize that I think we're over the target and we need intercessors. So we are praying for intercessors to cover us so that we can continue to do what we're called to do. And because it's not just about us now, as far as
Yeah.
pressing in, we're pressing in so that we can give that to other people. And the enemy does not appreciate that. So it's been sobering, but at the same time, even though my body felt like it was literally falling apart, I'm like, wait a minute, Angela is the one that got in the car accident, but I can't walk and I can't lift my arm. And it's just been really kind of crazy,
Well,
but
as
it made me cry.
as upsetting as it's been, I also have this giddiness in me. It's like
Me too.
this, like a warrior spirit rising up.
Mhm.
That, and I love that you talked about pressing in advancing, because what I'm feeling right now is, I know that God allows things in certain seasons to teach us really valuable things. And what I'm learning in this season is the value of intercession,
Yep.
of in, of having, everything guarded, and everything set in place and aligned in the spirit, so that it provides a protective, barrier around us. And I just know that in this season, there's going to be like a tenacity built into us as we just build a deeper relationship with God. And you and I have been through enough with him now, through
Mm,
all of our down seasons, that we know that if we pay attention to, like, what he wants to build into us,
right.
we always come out on top. It's always better. So we can't lose.
Yeah, and I feel exactly the same way. I get a notification. Um, just kind of an excitement because I know that I'm in good hands regardless. I'm just like, okay, Lord, we got to hold this body together. We got to figure this out. But yeah, but this is serious business. But at the same time, it also makes me realize my deep, deep need for him. And this past weekend has really, gosh, it's allowed me to see God in a brand new way. Like to have peace when all this stuff was going on. And then he just kept injecting things like in my thoughts and in your thoughts, go this way, go that way. And it was just better than we could make it. I mean, you still have to plan, but when you partner with God, he partners with us and he does it. But we are in total need of him. But at the same time, we need to prepare and we need to align ourselves with him. And we did some of that the week before. He was checking us on very specific things um, concerning alignment. So yeah, I've learned a lot in these past 2 weeks. Got beat up a little bit, but I've learned a lot. And I'm excited. And I feel like the picture that I put up on the cover of this thing, I saw us in camouflage. I was like, this is the picture. We're at war, but we win. We win, but we need to take it serious too. So, yeah.
Well, it's easy to endure in good times, but our what God wants to build into us, and our endurance is really proven whenever you endure through the hard times.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see why, when people are getting closer to their call, why they retreat when the heat gets turned up.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is we have walked with the Lord enough years, and we have celebrated enough victories, that we know that all things, truly all things, work together for our good, because we're loved by God and called according to his purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So if he brings us to it, it's because he wants to teach us through it.
Right. Right. And I think, one of the lives we had was a healthy fear of God.
Yeah.
And I have that more and more as I go. So it helps me not fear what could be or what's coming at me because I fear him. I know that he is all powerful and he also loves me and he knows that my heart is for him even when I'm not always getting it just right, that he is for us, right? So in my past, I don't want people to be afraid. Like I used to think years ago, I'm just not doing anything because I want to keep my head below the radar of Satan. I don't want to get beat up. I don't want to have this. I don't want to have that. Well, you're going to live a dead life. Trust me. If you want to feel alive, then you fear a holy God and you do what he says. And as things come at you, those fiery darts, ultimately has you, right? But we do need to fear him, as in being in alignment and having intercessors and not making light of it. But I'm in it, right? He's called us and I'm in it. And I think his warriors are very un uh they're not what you would think warriors look like, you know?
Yeah.
He's he's calling us, right? We don't look like warriors, but deep in our heart, he knows who we are. And I think the warriors today will stand and they fear him. And they're going to rise from places you don't even know. And they're not always going to be the people at the top of the church that
Mm-hmm.
this and that. And I don't have any, I mean, there's a lot of wonderful, godly people and godly men, but they've also some, I think he's rerouting his church and his bride. And
Yeah, I do too.
they're going to be not what we always expect. So don't be afraid of the battle because, like I said, that's where life is. That's where our
Yeah.
is
Well,
and our destiny.
and I was thinking about this today. It's like, when you think about the seasons that we have, your fall, winter, your spring, your summer, like some seasons look like there's not much going on. It looks like there's a lot of death and, things rotting and dying for the winter or whatever. And then where there's like a lot of productivity and you see the fruit growing and all that. But it's like you can't appreciate day unless you appreciate night.
Right.
And you can't appreciate sun unless you learn how to appreciate rain.
Mm-hmm.
And I this morning I woke up and it's like I'm going to try to like say this without crying, but I just woke up this morning and I just had so much going through my heart about just not fearing that he is going to teach us in the pressing and crushing. He's going to teach us how to weather life storms. And our friend Marilyn, she spoke to us tonight about when Satan was, when his eyes were roaming to and fro on the earth and he was looking for someone to attack or whatever. And God said, have you considered my servant Job? Because he knew that Job would never deny him or curse him or anything. Like he would go through the pressing and crushing and come out greater. And there's been many times in my life where I felt like I was being sifted. And this is kind of one of those seasons. But I have learned how to really press in. And anytime I've had to press in, I've always come out so much richer. And in the end, I've always come out feeling like I had this treasure in my hand, that I had a hold of something so much greater than I wouldn't have gotten if I wouldn't have went through the trials with the Lord. And so in this pressing and crushing, I just keep praying, God, making us new wine and empty us so that we don't look anything like the enemy.
Yeah.
And I think based on the storm of life that you go through, they all look different. There's different aspects of God that you can learn in the secret place based on what kind of trial you're walking through. And I'm excited to see what God's going to do with us.
Yeah. And we have had plenty of dry season. Right before spring comes, everything is brown and rigid and ugly and colorless. We have been in that place for quite some time. And we have like sown a lot of seeds, it feels like. And we kind of look at each other sometime and go, I don't see anything coming up. Like, did we sow it right? Is it deep enough? Did we sow the right, and then all of a sudden, spring comes and it's like boom, 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 boom. And I feel, I feel like we're in spring right now because, all the sifting and all the planting and all the brown trees that, are leafless. I just feel like you just have to know that it's a season that you're going through, and it's not always going to be there, and there is going to be beauty that comes from it. And even this, I'll never forget, Ange, when you showed up on the steps of the Airbnb, you were just like, I don't get it. I don't get it. This makes no sense. All the preparation and everything. And I thought the same thing, like, how can good come from this? But yet good came from it. So, and we watched God move in a way that I don't think we would have seen it the same way. It's crazy.
Yeah,
So, yeah, my encouragement, don't be afraid, people. Don't be afraid. Just get under his wing of protection and just listen. Do what he wants us. And that's why the secret place is so important. We have to have that time with him. We have to be able to hear, his voice. And yeah, it's really what's done in the secret place that gets you through and gives you joy in the midst of chaos, like literal chaos. I
well,
just that weekend and this week has been chaotic.
well, in James 1, 2 through 3, it says, "My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience." And, it's truly when we come into those desperate places and we're pursuing God, that he does reveal our purpose
Yeah,
in him.
yeah, that's really good. Okay, so let's move on to we're talking about seasons and the waiting. Isaiah 28:16. Whoever believes will not act hastily. You want to touch on that, Ange? She sent me these notes.
Well, I just think that when we sit down with God, that now
Mm,
I want you, just think about, like, when you sit down with God, it's like you kind of have your checklist. You're like, okay, I'm going to do my devotional. I'll probably listen to a little bit of worship. I'm going to do my devotional. I'll probably have a section of Bible that I read, and I'll probably do
mm,
journaling. And I'm sure there's always going to be time that you confess or that you ask the Lord to
right.
forgive, whatever. But then it's kind of like, we're done. Okay, we're done with our day. Then we're just going to go ahead. We did what we needed to do with the Lord. But the part that we forgot to do in that moment was the waiting on him, the
Mm,
sitting still and just listening to him and getting his guidance for the day. Like, it takes discipline to do that. It takes practice. But waiting, like, attentively, like gazing at him with no distractions, like just looking in his face and waiting for his hand to move and for him to give you direction, is like, it's an art.
yeah.
And we have to learn it, because it's not just a one-sided relationship where we're doing all the talking. When we're waiting, we're learning how to listen too.
I think the big shift I've had in my walk, and I think all those things that you just named off, the journaling and the reading and all these things, they're really good, and there's a time and a place for them. I'm just kind of at the point lately that I've just been trying to be, and it's always going to look different, but I really try to practice not asking for anything because if you've ever had a friend that the only time they call you is when they want something or need something, after a while you're like, it's a little annoying. Do they even love me? Do they like me? So I've just been trying to have a grateful heart, be thanking him, be just praising him for who he is. And that has been the best way for me lately to hear his voice, because then I just ask him questions about him and, what do you need from me today? Where do you, is there someone you want me to touch? Is there something within me that you want to show up up for or change or whatever. It's been this whole shift in my mind. And it seems like I'm having dreams like all the time now. And I wake up and I'm like, holy smokes. I just lay there and I'm like, Lord, like, what is that about? I had this dream the other night that I was pregnant. And I'm like, wait, hold on a second. I'm like, I can't do this. And they're like, no, you're good. You're gonna give birth. And Angie and I talked about it. And yeah, there was a lot of detail to it, but I won't go into that. But God loves to speak to us in our dreams. So pay attention to those. He wants us to hear him. He wants that
Well,
relationship. So that's kind of been new for me.
you know, I was thinking this morning about how, like, sometimes, like, it, for years, like years and years, like we're pressing in, pressing in for something specific, years and years and years. And I think about, like, my mom. I remember as a kid, she's an intercessor, and she would press in for people for years and years and years. And they always say, push, pray until something happens. But intercessors are taught, you don't give up. You keep praying, you keep pressing, you keep pushing, you keep interceding, you keep declaring, you keep, and it's like, I think that our persistence in the pressing in, I believe it moves God's heart.
Mm.
And I believe that we could have years of pressing in, and all of a sudden in a moment he'll change things. In a moment we can have a suddenly in a moment where he decides to shift things. But this whole thing that we've been walking through, like since the retreat and the car accident and you hurting yourself and feeling the heat of warfare and all that, I know us. I know that we're going to be intentional at asking God specific questions. How do you want us to pray? How do you want us to intercede? How do you want us to press in? What do we need to empty ourselves of? What are we missing?
Yeah.
Where do we need to pray for our husbands to step up? There could be just a number of things. And I don't know about you, but all day long I've been feeling like we need to get a list
Me
together.
too.
And we need to start our fasting and stuff again,
Mm-hmm.
because I know that we're over the target.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that the enemy would want nothing more than to discourage us and get us to, retreat and not press into what God's called us to do.
Yeah, true. Yeah. I think that's another thing that we can talk about in another live is fasting. We've done, I don't know, we're just learning that, and we've been dabbling in it, I should say. Like I did a pretty long fast a while back, and the mountains were moved, and that was really encouraging. But yeah, let me see where we're at now. Here I have clinging. Psalms 119:31. I cling to your testimonies, O Lord. Do not put me to shame. Uh, his testimonies are his mighty acts of intervention on behalf of his people. How he parted the waters, how he's provided manna, how he brought down the walls of Jericho, how he raised the dead to life. Okay, so this is what happens. This is our looking back. All the times that God showed up, this is what we do. We turn and we remember, right? And the more God takes you through these tough times, just like this past weekend, you realize another facet of him and how powerful he is. And regardless, if he can do that, then he can do this, right? And that's how I've kind of, you know, grown in my faith, even like with this leg and this hip. I've like, I'm like, Lord, you have restored my health so many times when the doctor said, yeah, this, you're going to need surgery. You're going to need this. You're going to need that. And I'm like, I'm just standing on it, Lord. You can do whatever you want. And the more we have that pressing and that crushing, and we come out on the other side, we realize that he can do anything. So it just fires us up for more, right, Ann?
Yeah.
Clinging
I mean, I think
to what
I,
he's done, who he
I
is.
about you, but I know like when I'm going through hard times, it does something to the inside of me whenever I go from this doom and gloom, oh gosh, I'm going through this again and woe is me, whatever. And then if I switch it then to God, I remember what you did.
Yeah.
I remember when you showed up for me on such and such time. And I remember when you spoke to my heart and you said this. And I remember that time that you did this for my daughter. And I remember that time that you showed up when I didn't think you would and you provided. And just feel the power
Yeah.
in that. It's like it's encouraging yourself in the Lord. And all of a sudden, as you encourage yourself in the Lord, he just gets bigger and bigger and bigger inside of you. And
Yes.
suddenly you're not even looking at your circumstances
Yep.
anymore. You are remembering what he did for you.
Yep. You remember that, and you also realize who he is. Like when you begin to fear him, and when I say fear him, you're in awe. You're like in awe. And it's like, you know what? Regardless of what happens to me, like there I can't lose, right? What's the worst thing that can happen? That's what I was thinking this week. I mean, I would be sad to be taken out right now because I feel like I've got work to do and I've been called before the beginning of time. I was like, who was Marilyn was sharing that with us. It was so beautiful. Or no, I'm sorry, this was Mary. Um, that we came from his heart. He placed us here. He had
Mhm.
every day in mind that he was gonna, every act that he had for us to do, everything and call and purpose that he had for us on this earth, he knew before he even placed us here, right? And now he's just removing all the junk that the world's put on us so we can see our mission and our plan. I don't want to miss that. I don't want to miss that. That's living. I don't care how beat up you get on the way. I was thinking you can do whatever you want, but I'm going to hobble my way to my destiny and my purpose, right? So what do we have to fear? And we remember who he is, and if we fear him, we don't really fear what can happen. And for those
Well,
of you, yeah.
I just feel like I feel I have to cling to him
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like I'm too vulnerable without him.
Mm-hmm.
I read in my book this morning that, we have to cling to him like somebody would cling to a life vest if they couldn't swim and they were out in the middle of an ocean. That's how we have to cling to him in the depth of the stuff that we're in. We have to cling to him like
Mm-hmm.
like he's your only saving grace, and he
Yeah.
is. And I feel sometimes whenever I'm walking through things, it's like I feel sometimes like all of the emotions that get involved. It's been a very emotional week for me, especially knowing that someone was, lost their life in that accident that I was in last weekend. I've had a lot of emotions, and I'm a very emotional person as it is. And so that just kind of sent me over the edge for a couple of days. And I had no idea, what I was going to do next. But I just have found myself, just clinging to him desperately. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have all the answers. I don't know why that stuff happened. I don't know why half the stuff happens to me that happens. But I
Right.
know that there's one person I can lean on and I can depend on that never lets me down, and it's him.
Yeah.
He never lets me down.
Yeah. And for those that are listening, we have every bit of emotion that everyone does. You know what I mean? We have our ups and our downs daily. It's daily. But he's still the truth of who he is always rises to the surface through all the muck and mire and the sadness and the confusion. You know what I mean? He just rises up and we remember. We remember what he's done in the past, and we remember who we are in him. And if anything, this weekend showed me that without his partnering with us, I got nothing. Nothing. You know what I mean? With all the preparation, everything, lives are not changed unless he steps in. Unless he steps in, stands in us, and speaks through it. Nothing changes. But when he does, the simplest of things um, that look simple, you know, transform people. It's amazing. It's God's spirit. He transforms people. He knows exactly what they need to hear, how they need to hear it. We were doing this skit, and it was all ad-libbed, and he was definitely boom, 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 giving us ideas, and it wasn't like we planned. You know, it was definitely not well orchestrated on our part. We just walked in because we were like disheveled before we got into the room, and it was supposed to be this little half an hour bleep in our day. In and you know, we had hour teachings and so forth, and this silly little skit he spoke to people through in a
Yeah.
way only God can speak to people. Very simple, very just, but so direct. And I just watched people weep
Yeah.
and from years of pain because he spoke through it. And I'm like, I'm nothing but a mouthpiece. You know what I mean? We're both nothing but a mouthpiece. And that's what you have to be. And yeah, it's hard to stay there because you want to take it upon yourself sometimes. You think it's got to be this, it's got to be that. What's it supposed to look like? But it's constantly just emptying. And I don't know. I don't know. I don't get it all, but I just know he's amazing. And I'm so excited to be part of it and just to be in the same room with him. I'm just excited about that.
Think about the number of things, Barb, that we've learned. You know, there's just been a lot of things about his depth and who he is, as our defender, um, that we've just learned through the hard things. It's it's like, you know, we don't learn this stuff unless we walk it out. Like we have to walk it out, and and the only way to learn who he is to take him by the hand, and like we said, to just cling to him, you know, through it all. Just pay attention to his steps and try to do everything according to his will, and leaning in and listening to his voice and allowing him to speak through all of the hardcore deep stuff. um I just think about, you know, there's certain songs that we sing in church that they just go right past my brain now and right to my heart, because I know who he is in the depth of me now.
Yeah. And you know, I think another thing's been a big relief for me is, you know, I've said it before, and I think we mentioned it on the weekend that, you know, suffering is a big part of his design work. I mean, it gives the structure like strength and sturdiness that it would never have otherwise. And he showed me that when I was writing the book and stuff. And I don't know about you, but most of us have ducked and weaved and you know, did everything we could not to suffer. God forbid we suffer, right? Or we have hardship or we have heartache or all these things that we want to avoid it at all cost. But we can't do that. It comes, you know, it rains on the righteous and the unrighteous, right? We all have troubles. We all have problems. We all have these things that many times have nothing to do with a choice that we made. But it's in that is where I have grown exponentially, you know,
Mm-hmm.
faith. And I look back and I'm thinking, well, even that, even that is really a great thing. Like, what are you doing, Lord? Like, this really hurts. This doesn't make sense. It doesn't have to always make sense to our minds.
Mm-mm.
Um, and what do we have to fear if we don't even have to fear suffering? Because He can even use that and do great things with it. I mean, that might sound like I'm looking through rose colored glasses, but really, I'm not. I've taken my glasses off and I'm like, you know what? It's all good as long as we're in His care and we've surrendered to Him. Whatever, He's trustworthy, is all I can say. That's all I can say. And, but
Well,
so,
you know, there are so many things in life that, you know, you could be the smartest person in the world with the most degrees. You could have years of schooling and training and just all the knowledge that you could ever gather through reading every encyclopedia on the bookshelf. And there's just so many things that you still, in your own power and strength, you won't get it. And
mm-hmm,
unless you cling to Him. And it's just, it bypasses all of our own knowledge. And I think that's why so many people have such a hard time giving up control. You know, everything's always kind of worked for them.
mm-hmm,
And then at some point in your life, you have to give up control because you realize that no matter how hard you fight, it doesn't work.
mm-hmm.
You have to lean into Him for His direction and guidance. And you know, He's really raising us up through all of our hardship to learn how to lean into Him and to reach for Him. And I read something today that it talked about, you know, you don't mind clinging to Him so much in public if you're already learning how to cling to Him in private. And it's like, you know, Paul talked all the time about his weaknesses. You know,
Yeah.
he was always talking about his weaknesses and how he had this absolute dependence on the Lord. He had no problems admitting to people that he had to cling to God because
Mm-hmm.
he learned through the thorn in the flesh and all that. He learned how to cling to God in the private. And
Yeah.
I I definitely, I mean, when I went through some of the hardest things in my life, I learned that it was not about my own control anymore. It was all about my surrender.
Absolutely. That's the key. And the more you realize it's all about surrender, the more you realize um, it's not about how you perform for Him. It's not about how you strive. It's not about how good you look on the outside. You can really just relax and be who He created you to be. And when you do that, it's easy to love others around you for who they are and realize I'm never going to be enough because I'm incomplete without Him. But with Him, I'm I'm totally complete. I'm everything I need to be, and that I'm wonderful and I'm amazing and I'm beautiful in my own way. And that sounds so arrogant, but it's not, because when we allow Him to join us, we're who we were meant to be, right? And that's what we're trying to convey to women. Less of us and more of Him makes us amazing, right? All of us amazing and able to do things that we could never do on our own. So the striving can be put aside and um, replace it with maybe pursuing Him and chasing after Him. And performance, I don't know. What's the opposite of performance? Um, Surrender? I don't know. I'm getting very deep here, but I'm
Yeah.
just really, the more I get to know Him, the more I understand I don't have what it takes. I really don't. I don't feel like holier and holier. I just feel more complete because I feel more complete because he joins me in everything, and that's when things work well. Does
You
that make sense?
know, Song of Solomon 8:5, it says, "Who is this coming up from the wilderness, leaning up on her beloved?"
Mm.
It's like that's what you learn in the wilderness. In the wilderness, you learn who your beloved is. And notice it doesn't say, "Who is this coming up from the wilderness? She's well capable to handle herself and she is now strong." And no, it says, "Who is this coming up from the wilderness, leaning on her beloved?" It's like we always talk about, raising women up to unmovable and unshakable.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true that the more you lean on the rock, the more unmovable and unshakable you are, because you're leaning on him. Like he is your
Right,
rock,
right.
ever present time of need. But it's all about leaning on your beloved. Like,
True. That's exactly what I'm talking about. It's just like it's this strange dichotomy of trying less and pursuing him more, and leaning on him and not trying to perform and do it all yourself. And when you do that, you become all the things that you would want to become if you were, you know what I mean? It's like an upside down kingdom, right?
mm-hmm.
Everything that we do in this world or think we need to do, we really need to do the opposite when it comes to him. And
Barb, I'm in the middle of writing, a book, and a 52-week journey book of healing the soul. And one of the things I wrote about in that book was talking about the oyster, and the pearl that gets stuck in the oyster, and the reason why the pearl is formed is because the oyster's real tender inside, and there's like a foreign object or a little piece of grain that gets in there, and the tenderness of that oyster in the hiding. And then that oyster, develops things to try to protect its insides from that irritant, and then that's when the pearls form. And so, like, nothing changes us so profoundly until we endure through, like, the grueling hardship. The longer we press in, the more valuable the pearl becomes, the more valuable it's made inside of us. And God honors us when we walk through the hardship and the grueling things with him, the fire of hardship and suffering. He honors us with deep revelation, and he builds such a value, like the pearl, such value he builds within you, such beauty he builds within you whenever you're in that secret place with him, and you're working with him through all of the irritation to try to, have his help and his asking for his glory to come in. And
that's so good.
it's
That is good.
it's uh yeah, there's so much more about the pearls. I wrote a lot in my book about it,
I
but
love that.
it's
Well,
truly anything we look at in nature, there's a parallel for how it applies to our life.
and I was thinking today, and you know how we always say, he's doing this in real time. Like we would write our book and he'd like something would happen that week and we would write about it in our book. We were like, oh my gosh, he's doing it. Did it this weekend. He's doing it this week. He is he is present. We are in the present and we really need to look at what he's doing today. And I just think about all oh gosh, the last year, 2 years, there were so many times we had discussions like, I just feel like I'm in the desert. I feel like I'm in this dry season. I feel like what is going on? Has it all been for nothing? But it's during those times when that irritant is in there and we're in the secret place and we're just crying out and he's just going like this and we have no idea that that pearl, is being formed and that deep faith is being built. And what we need for tomorrow is being built today, right? So, yeah, I think what we can take away from today is there's joy in the crushing. There's joy in the pressing, right? There's joy in the suffering. There's value in the suffering. There's lessons to be learned that can be learned no other way. So, what do we have to fear? What do we have to fear? We certainly don't have to do it on our own. We probably should fear that. Trying to do it on our own because we've done that. It doesn't work. But I mean, we can just pursue the one we love. We can lean on the one that we love. We can listen to the one that we love, and he'll direct our paths. And whatever life, whatever he hands us, whatever our assignment is, it was built for us. So there'll be joy in there. There'll be life in that. There'll be uh, so much.
Well, you know how it's so amazing, because you and I have talked about this so many times, but it's like, I mean, we always make jokes about how, oh, he's teaching us literally in real time. He's teaching us in real time. And it's like we come up on these retreats or whatever, and we're like, what do we teach about? And then we're like, well, let's look and see what are we walking through in real time. Oh, let's go with that. It's like I've said it before, but it's like he is the chief cornerstone. Jesus is the rock of our salvation, and we are cut from the rock. We are these small living stones, and so every day is a living testimony of him and what he's doing in our life. And I'm excited to see what he's going to do in us through this pressing, because I think when we come through it, we're going to have some pearls.
Yeah.
And who understands that more than the pearl of great price?
That's
Jesus,
good.
you know, Jesus had, you think about it, was just watching a documentary the other day about like the stress that he went through when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, the stress that he was going through as he was waiting to be taken to be crucified. He was literally bleeding. He was bleeding sweat was blood was coming out of his sweat glands. And there's a for that, but it's one of the most painful. There's been some documented cases where women have sweat blood when they're giving birth. It's the most grueling pressure and pain that you can go through, and he was sweating blood.
It's so, yeah, I'm sorry.
And he was experiencing that grueling irritation of that. You know, he was that pearl of great price that was being formed.
And so many of us are like, if God was real, I wouldn't have to experience it. I wouldn't have this pain. I mean, I get it, but I think it's so easy for us to forget what he did for us, so that eternity could be ours. Like, like I was just thinking, you know, a couple weeks ago when I was having all these pain issues and stuff, and I just remember like walking, and I could barely put one foot in front of the other, and I was praising him, and I was like, thank you that I can experience this and still step forward for you, even in the pain. It's such a little thing compared to what you've done for me. Like the pain that you've experienced for me, not just that I can know you now, but that I could be free forever. Like it's mind boggling. It's mind boggling. So anyway, he's suffered way beyond anything we will ever suffer. And it's a very small thing that we can do if that's what we're called to do.
So to wrap up, we're talking about enduring, who he is in the secret place, enduring through the pressing and hard times, to just press in, to learn him, to know him, to hear him in the enduring. It's what builds, you know, endurance in us, to run the race,
Mm-hmm.
long suffering. And we're learning to wait on him, to not just sit with him and have it be about our agenda, but to wait on him, to ask him the questions like, what does he want to do? How does he want to speak to us? How does he want to use us today? Where does he want us to go? Like, just waiting on him to know how to press in, and the clinging to him. And in desperation that we cannot do anything alone, and then just to walk it out. There's so many things that we can learn in the secret place with him.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way we learn it is to do it, is to have a tenacity,
Mm-hmm.
to not give up,
Right. Right.
to do whatever it takes to defend and to protect that sacred place with him in the secret place.
That's so
We have
good.
to protect it. We have to treat it like it's, my husband jokes about how Jesus gets way more time with me than he does. And he's right. I love this. I love him.
Yeah.
And I don't always get it right. I have some days where, I don't spend as much time with him or whatever. But I've learned through the years that if I go 2 days or so and I don't have my Jesus time, I don't feel good. I feel empty. And I've grown to the place where I'm very selfish about my time with the Lord. I have to have it every morning now.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you listening that, maybe you feel like you haven't been pressing in, or maybe you feel like you haven't been consistent, you can start now.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to wait another year. You can start now. He really does pay attention to us when we pursue him and press in. He pays attention. He loves it when we reach for him. He loves to see us, making those steps to learn how.
Mm-hmm.
And he comes closer to us when we do that, because he wants to be close to us. And when he sees our heart moving towards him, he moves closer.
So good. So good. All right. Well, that was, yeah. We'll see what happens this following week, this next week. Okay. So what are we going to be talking about next Sunday? And
Afraid you would ask that because I don't have a clue.
it's going to be a surprise. It'll
Yep.
be a surprise. God
Gonna
always
be
has something to say, and he's always, so we will, we'll see what he's doing in real time by next week. I mean, we could continue to talk about the secret place for a very long time, but, yeah, we will see. But thank you so much, everybody, for just joining us, and share these videos if they've spoken to you, if anything, has touched you or made sense. Maybe somebody else needs to hear it. We're not sure what the Lord's doing with all this, but we don't have to know. We're just sharing our life with you in the real time that we have with him, because he's pretty amazing. And we just want to encourage you to reach out and just get to know him and love him and spend time with him and let him love on you, because he adores you and is waiting for you in the secret place. So we will see you next Sunday at 8 p.m. And we're going to share this on Facebook tomorrow. So
Yeah. Good night, everybody. Thanks
good
for
night.
joining us.
Yeah. Bye-bye.